Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Thank you for coming to my channel. Well, I'm going to talk about a stimulus update or a possible new stimulus check, which that would be the fourth one. And there's still some people that are still waiting on the $1,400 check, and some of them went out this week. And so a lot of Americans are just now getting that third check in. And so far we've had a total of 3 checks totaling $3,200. The first one was for $1,200 at the very beginning of the pandemic. Then we got a second one months later for $600. And then this third one, the one just recently this year, for $1,400. And a lot of people are still struggling. It's really hard still. Our economy is really slow. There's a lot of businesses that have closed down and have no plans to reopen. So our whole economy in this country is restructuring. So it's going to be very slow and very just everything's lagging behind because of the pandemic. Everything is still not fully recovered, and with the infection rate still kind of bouncing around, and with India, what's happening in India, which is catastrophic. And Brazil was having, just a really, really horrible time. Italy was having such a hard time also. So the global economy is completely slowed down. And America is picking up a little bit, but with some of the lockdowns that are still being enforced, it's really hard. People are just still struggling. States are going through their ups and downs on this pandemic. Some infection rates are going down, some are going up, and some places have been through 1 or 2 lockdowns already. And I think, Texas, we've completely reopened. We just had 1 lockdown. It was, pretty lengthy, but our economy it's slow, and we have a strange economy in Texas. In some sorts, we have a really fast economy for certain industries, and then just from the land mass that we have, just how large our state is, and we do have a lower, economic scale than probably a lot of states. We have a lot of people who are in the lower poverty level, and with the population that we have a different we have different tiers with a lot of amounts in each tier. So each it's like, it would be like cramming 2 or 3 states together and adding their numbers up to kind of equal how Texas is. And with our landmass being so far apart, and like some of our larger cities that have like millions of people in them, they're starting to recover a little bit better, but there's still high unemployment. And some of these smaller rural areas in these smaller towns, it's probably a lot harder, I think, because a lot of the people who are in these smaller towns have to drive, like me, where I have to drive to another city. And with the cost of gas and I think it's just a lot harder on the rural area than it is with a larger city. And the economy, because you're closer to jobs, you're more accessible to resources to help. And with a lot of these smaller towns, there's a lot of retired people, a lot of lower income people in rural or smaller towns. And the mass of unemployment, well, actually only 4 out of 10 people got unemployment that were eligible. A lot of people didn't know about it, and a lot of people just didn't want to struggle with the wait times, or if you have to travel from a small town to a bigger city, because we have very few resources in the small town I live in. And it's that way with a lot of small towns, and Texas has just hundreds of small towns, and with small populations, like just a few thousand. And these people would have to travel to another city, and especially for for a meeting in person, like going to an IRS building or something like that, we have very few resources. We just have small city government in these small towns. So a lot of people didn't try it. It was very annoying, I guess you could say, just very exhausting. Some people that I worked with, they were saying they had to stay on the phone for like 6 hours, just waiting literally on hold for 6 or 7 hours. And then being denied the first time and sometimes 2 times, you have to refile. And a lot of people don't understand that process. A lot of times when you file for unemployment, they just deny you anyway, even though you're eligible. I think that, to me, that sounds like more like they do it on purpose. To me, that's like fraudulent. I don't agree with the process that they have. And then after 2 or 3 times people are given the unemployment, and I think that's just, for them to have to go through that many hoops, a lot of people do give up, and a lot of people didn't get their unemployment checks because of that reason. And that's all this, just not just a struggling economy, but people not working, not getting jobs, or the jobs that are available. Some people don't want to go back to these jobs. Some people are, not willing to risk their health still, especially for low wages. And certain jobs that have closed down, some people have been in like restaurant industry for 20 or 30 years. That's what they worked in. And then with certain restaurants closing down and these people not being skilled, they've always worked for restaurants. And there's a period of time where I worked for restaurants for, more than a decade. And if you're good at doing that type of work, or if you are experienced at that type of work, then you can get jobs fairly easily. And if you're a hard worker, you do the job well, then you don't really have that much of a problem getting a job. But now, with people being shut out of those jobs, they're unskilled, they have to find a different field to work in, and there may not be that many choices, especially if they have to travel very far. And I know what that's like. If you live in a small town, there's only a certain amount of jobs available, and the rest of probably, I'd say between 10 and 20% maybe can get a job in a small town, and the rest have to go outside to a larger city or another town, even to other smaller towns. And it's that way sometimes in certain areas of Texas where there's not like a large city. We have like certain cities like Houston, Austin, and around the eastern coast, somewhere around there. There's a huge population. Then it goes up into Dallas, and in that area there's a lot of small towns, and a lot of those people travel every day back and forth to these bigger cities for their jobs. But you go a little bit further west, and there's mass expansive areas where there's 75, 100 miles to get to a much larger city. And a lot of people, they don't want to drive that far, or they'll stay in a larger city for 4 or 5 days, and then they come home they may stay with relatives or something like that, and then they come home to a small town on their weekend on the days off. And this whole pandemic just completely threw everybody off. It's just so, the things that had to be, like I say, restructured or done in a different way because of all the shutdowns and the loss of jobs and loss of income, even for some people who are not necessarily wealthy, but they may be making, $100,000, $200,000 a year because they owned a restaurant or a bar. And throughout these shutdowns, they've totally lost all their income. And some of these people who may work in restaurant or bar, or own restaurant and bars, if they couldn't get finance for it, they used their own savings, their retirement, or they put their house or some other collateral up for the business. And with the pandemic shutting them down, they lost their business. And then if they couldn't make the payments to the bank, they may have lost their collateral in their house or whatever they put up. And I've heard numerous stories of people losing everything because of their restaurant or their bar being closed down. And in Texas, we have an astronomical amount of bars and restaurants. And those were the things that were probably the hardest hit of all industries, I'd say. And with a lot of them were shut down for months. They just couldn't. They couldn't work with the hours, or it was a total shutdown, and they were just losing money left and right. And so it destroyed some people's livelihood and their retirement, because a lot of bars and restaurants, if they weren't being financed, like I say, some people use their retirement savings to open up like a restaurant or a bar to fund the rest of their retirement, so they can have a larger, retirement. And I've heard of stories, just, I don't know how many, just tons and tons of stories of people losing everything. And even hairstylists and nail salons. There's so many businesses here in Texas that were just completely decimated. People just, they struggled as long as they could, and after a certain point, they just lost everything. And so the recurring payments that some people were talking about at the beginning of the pandemic, Kamala Harris, and I've already made several stimulus package videos about this, she was one who wanted to do the $2,000 per month monthly payments. And I never thought that would happen. I never, it was hard enough trying to squeeze these 3 payments out of a Republican administration. And even with this Biden administration being Democrat majority, it was even hard to do it then. It had to be done, pretty much by force. They just did it, without the input of Republicans, because Republicans just didn't care and they didn't want to participate in it. And that was the only way we got the $1,400 check. So trying to squeeze out $2,000 per month, I just don't see it happening. I don't see it happening at all. We are still in the midst of a pandemic, still struggling. The economy is slow, and the virus is going up and down. Infections are going up and down, and it's not. I just don't see it happening. It would be wonderful, but I don't see it happening. And in July, starting in July, they're going to do the child tax credit for families. If you have a child under 6, you're going to get $300 a month. Or if you have children 6 to 17, that's $250. And that's going to go on for 6 months. That's from July to December. And 21 senators signed a letter in March to Biden supporting the recurring payments. And they were all Democrats, not a single Republican. So that just shows, how it's 2 times that these recurring payments have been brought up already, and they've been shot down. And I think that there's a possibility that we might get 1/4 payment, but I don't believe that, or how much it will be, I don't know. I don't know, couldn't even guess. The numbers have been all over the place, 1,200, 600, 1,400. So the 4th one, who knows? And with the $2,000 recurring payment, I just still don't have any faith in it. Don't think it'll ever happen. And with the $2 trillion infrastructure plan that Biden wants to implement, that would be taken from the corporate tax rate, which is 21% right now. Corporations pay only 21%, which I think is ludicrous. And Biden wants to push it up to 28%, and that's how it would be funded. And this is, it's very much needed. I mean, the roads, the schools, the affordable housing, and just numerous other things that could be strengthened and rebuilt through this infrastructure plan. America needs that. And we haven't really had a huge growth plan, I want to say, for roads and all the things that I've just said. It needs to be done. there's so much that's crumbling in this country, and it's a massive, massive project. But every once in a while you have to rebuild things. You have to make things more accessible and make things like broadband. A lot of rural places don't have broadband still, and that's everybody needs some communication. Cell phone is much more used than a landline nowadays. Everybody has cell phone. Little kids have cell phones. Even people, when I worked in the nursing home, there were people, in their 70s and 80s that had cell phones that they knew how to. A lot of these people who were retired, who already had jobs where they had been using computers for decades, getting a cell phone wasn't that big of a deal for a lot of elderly people that worked in an industry where they had to use a computer. There are a lot of elderly people who don't use the internet, don't have any idea, have no idea, but there's still a lot of families that are stuck out in Timbuktu with no kind of broadband, no kind of internet service. So I think that's super important. The internet service, the broadband, that really needs to be done all across the country. Excuse me. And Apple, okay, this goes back to the corporate tax rate being raised. Apple doubled their profits in one quarter. $23.6 billion profit. That's, above everything else. That's profit. And that's in one quarter. And that's double than the quarter from last year. That's, that this doesn't include, this is just one quarter. That's only a portion of a year that they can make $23.6 billion with a B, billion dollars profit. Hell yes, tax them. Raise it up to 28%. So what? I'm not going to cry about it. I don't care about, raising the corporate tax rate sky high. When you make $23.6 billion, and a lot of it was fueled by the pandemic. He made, this, I want to say these people, I hate calling out names, but, these people, they've made enough money. Raise the corporate tax rate, fund all this stuff, rebuild America, get all people back to work, start raising the minimum wage, all this infrastructure also will help with the economy and the unemployment. There will be jobs, everywhere, and a lot of it will be skilled for construction and stuff like that. So a whole segment of the economy will bounce back. It'll be like a boom to this country. The infrastructure plan, it may be super expensive, but it's going to infuse the economy like you wouldn't believe. All kinds of projects like this where they're able to hire skilled labor that is not, I want to say skilled labor that may not be educated as far as a college degree, but they are skilled. People who know how to drive dump trucks and forklifts and just massive manual labor people who are skilled at doing a certain type of, cement work or types of work like that. These types of people will get, there'll be tons and tons of job opportunity. There also will be a lot of skilled labor, or educated labor, I want to say, for like engineers and people who, have higher education. They will also be hired into these projects also. Okay, that's just what I think about the stimulus plan, a future stimulus check, if there were to be one. I don't know how much it would be because, like I say, the numbers were all over the map, 12, 600, 1,400, so it could be any amount. I don't think there will be a recurring payment. It was like pulling teeth just to get these 3 checks out, and some people still haven't gotten the checks. So, I just have no hope for the recurring payments. It would be lovely, but I don't think so. Okay, thank you all, and I'll make another video. Thank you.